What's up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com, and in this video I have a interesting brief case study to share with you guys on the use of e-commerce footprints inside your search query versus not using them in the search query, and comparing which sample actually returned more URLs that ended up having a higher number of those e-commerce footprints. So hopefully, hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Let me paint you a picture here so that it's not too confounding. So basically, you'd have, say, search query like this, and let's say we're looking for a bunch of this search query in search engine, let's say for WooCommerce websites. And actually, let me use this these permutations here. So in this case study, these are the keywords used provided by the customer, and the customer is looking for a bunch of these terms with WooCommerce footprints. And so there's two ways to handle it at the search level. Once we have the URLs, we can go through using the page scanner here in the add-ons for Scrapebox, and we can then look for this custom footprint for plugins / WooCommerce. So there's no issue once we have the URLs, but given the fact that there could be many websites and there's only so many we can get from any given query. Say in Yahoo, there's 200 results at a basic limit, right, of queries that of results that can be returned per query. Um, and that might be extensible, but I haven't actually tested that. Um, and that's actually really deep to do, though. It takes a really long time to process that many URLs, because that's something like, well, it depends on the number of queries you have and the number of locations you're processing. For this order, what we were doing was, what is this, 10 lines? Yeah, 10 lines. So 10 lines by top 5,000 cities in the USA by 26 results deep, which is 1.3 million URLs. So that's still quite a lot. And obviously, when you get above 8 million URLs, it takes a really long time to process. So the question is, like, can we somehow get the footprint can we squeeze that footprint in with the keyword? Excuse me. Because then if we could do that, then maybe we could drop the depth of processing, quantity of URLs, so that it's not such an intensive job, and we're more honed in on those websites that use WooCommerce as an example. And it could be WooCommerce, it could be Shopify, it could be Square or Magento or other platforms, but in this case, we're looking at WooCommerce. And so what I did is I took that e-commerce footprint, and obviously I just put the footprint right in the query. Now, obviously, you're going to get some results that are going to be, pet supplies online with the WooCommerce footprint, but in some cases, you're going to get WooCommerce plugins, WooCommerce themes, maybe WooCommerce pet supply theme. And so that was sort of what I wanted to test, because I sort of was questioning myself running this particular job and saying, I need to test this and see what it looks like. So the first file I've got over here is 10 keywords that have that WooCommerce footprint. So when we drag it over to the section here, we can see that it's about 9K URLs. And you can see that some of them include plugins, plugin sites and what have you. But if you scroll down, you can also see some other types of websites. I've looked at it a little more closely, and there are some viable websites in here. It did make me wonder, though, because of the number of tech-oriented searches. It kind of made me wonder about maybe the placement of the footprint should be at the end of the query. Maybe that's something that should be tested. Maybe the prime part of the keyword needs to be in the beginning, and then the footprint needs to be at the end. But the problem is that the permutations take the keyword and smash them with locations in order to get really extensive results. And so that would mean that you'd have to create another level of permutation, um, excuse me, to add the footprint to the end of it, which is not hard to do. It just, excuse me, it's not convenient. So that's the way that I ran it though. Got 9K URLs. Now I ran the job again, only processing the keywords like this. So just the keywords straight up: pet supply online, homeware store online, online furniture shop. You get the idea. And these are how many URLs that this returned. Now, keep in mind, these URL samples, they're not just the raw URL. Obviously, the URLs are much higher than this. But these are the URLs that returned after I ran the page scanner to look for the, to look for the source-oriented footprint for WooCommerce. So once I had the URLs, then I went looking for the WooCommerce footprint. And these these are the samples that returned 9K out of that first scrape. Ended up I ended up confirming those as WooCommerce websites. And then over here on this one's 15K. So it's quite a bit more, surprisingly more. And that led me to wonder, what about the domain? So we trimmed these to domain level, and that makes up 4.2K. Do the same over here, and that is, let's see, 2.88K. So just a little bit less than twice the number of unique domains on the latter search that does not include the footprint in the URL in the search query. And so if we combine these two, it gives us 24K URLs, and then when we scrub them, it drops to 22.7, which tells us that the majority of the URLs from both samples are highly unique. There was some crossover, but majority was quite unique. And so some of it would be non-topical, but I think when I was looking at this sample with the footprint, some of them appeared to be um, topical. And so there's so many topics in the keywords, though it's kind of hard to be too critical on the sample. And so here's a furnishing one, but there are some wild, all over the place terms also. And so that could be just from having the footprint in the query. And when we look at the one that is queries, just the queries and not the footprints in the queries, it seems to be very, very topical. So well, a lot more topical by comparison. And so anyways, when I scrape for males, this is what returned. We have a sample of 20K males. Well, what seems to be 20K males from those pages, and it still needs to be scrubbed. And so it'll probably drop down. I would guess maybe 5K, which is pretty good because, well, I must have done a filter for emails on when I combined them, but at some point I think I also deliver the second sample with just males for that one too, because it's maybe a little bit cleaner than having them both combined. But anyway, so what's the point? The conclusion, I think, is that it's something to think about in terms of how you're structuring your queries to get you the URLs in the first place. It's the gateway to, in terms of dealing with topicality, certainly with a lot of terms. The When you have just like one term, it almost doesn't even matter, because you're going to go in there and scrape for metadata and then filter your sample by that one term, or do that one term on page. So that's a lot easier to handle. When it comes to a lot of terms like this, though, that's kind of hard to handle. And so you don't really want to go 200 results deep when you're not going to be able to very easily scrub the keywords. I mean, you could. It would be inconvenient, because even in just one term, there's a lot of types of furniture. You see what I'm saying? This is if you're looking at online furniture shops, or dog food. There's many different types of products in those niches. So it's kind of hard to be too critical. You know what I'm saying? So um, there is some value in trying to hone in the topical relevance of your surface level search query, if you see what I'm saying. But I think that it really shows that there's a safer yield by doing, because you could add both technically, but it would double the size of the scrape. And I think there's a safer yield at just using terms at face value and not trying to get too specific. You can't use site operators at scale, because the use of any site operator will get your proxies blocked faster than anything. It would be nice. That would make things a lot easier, but it just not. It doesn't even work on something like Yahoo, which is a lot easier to scrape than Bing, and Bing's a lot easier to scrape than Google. Um, so the best thing to do is just to describe it in your keyword, and apparently it'll give you almost twice as much of a yield. And that's just one case study. Of course, it's going to vary between niches, but even across 10 little niches, we still got twice as much yield. Now, it could be that only in certain types of those niches we got us um, maybe a more diverse result, possibly. But still, even though even when combining 10 niches and comparing, like, that's still telling us you're going to get a better yield by just using regular terms and not trying to include the footprint in the query. So I know everybody is wondering, should I use the footprint in my query? I mean, at least I was wondering that. And now you see why I was wondering that, because it does matter a surprising amount. So thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you later, guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.